morning or good afternoon. Thank you so much for taking time from your busy schedule to join me in this webinar on gaining control of products and process quality with integrated ALM. My name is Magdi Hanna. I'm pleased to spend the next hour with you to share with you my 30 years of experience with different aspects of ALM and how integrated ALM can actually help you control the quality of your products and processes. Throughout this webinar, I'm going to discuss with you the different aspects of an ALM and integrated ALM and show you how these can help you actually control the quality of a process, which in turn would actually help you control the quality of products through different projects. I'm hoping to have about 10-15 minutes at the end of the webinar to share with you an actual demo of the Rommana ALM software, which supports all the concepts I'm going to be talking about throughout the webinar. Well, let's get started with the ALM tools, what they are. There has been some confusion and misunderstanding about what an ALM tool. An ALM tool is a fully integrated set of tools that helps project teams work together in every aspect of a project. When I say every aspect, I mean user stories, requirements, test plans, test design, everything, bugs, issues, how to fix those, project management issues, and so on. You can only call a tool an ALM tool if actually it is supporting every aspect of a product life cycle, from beginning to end and continuing releases, as well as issues that happen after releases and so on. Some people think that just by having a bug tracking tool or a requirement management tool or a project management tool, they think that they have an ALM tool, which is not true. I'm sure many of you know that. In order to have a complete ALM tool, you really have to have support of every aspect of the project. Some time ago, an independent research company called RQX Global have compared 33 different tools that claim they are ALM tools, and they have ranked Rommana ALM, which is the highest score. I'll show you the chart later in the presentation. But as you can see, Rommana ALM supports requirement management and user story management, and it manages them very seamlessly. It has support of project management activities, including time estimation and effort, including scheduling everything that you can imagine in project management, although Rommana ALM uses a very unique approach to project management that's more of a requirement-based or feature-based project management. I'll be making another webinar on this topics in the next few weeks. All the activities of test management and also test design are there. Most tools out there will just help you manage tests, and sometimes they call themselves test case management tools. Well, I'm going to always say that managing tests, if those tests are not good, then it doesn't make a difference if you manage them or not. Before you have tests, you need to understand how you can design good tests, because as you probably know very well, the quality of any software product is only as good as the quality of the tests that have been written and executed. That's why test design is also part of Rommana ALM. Rommana ALM also handles all aspects of issue management. You can call them bug tracking if you want, if that's what you call them in your organization. If your project is using use cases, there is complete support of use cases there. There is a complete support of document management, whether it is related to requirements and user stories or not. You can get documents reviewed, approved, and so on and maintained within the Rommana ALM repository. There is also the concept of change management, which if you are really running a robust project, you have to have the concept of change management where requirements can change. How does this impact everything else? How it impacts the tests that have already been written? What other tests should be written? Has the change been approved? Under change management, there is a concept of change requests. As you can imagine, in architecting Rommana ALM, we've used actually all the known and proved concepts of software engineering. There is a lot of collaboration between team members within Rommana ALM. Again, this is just an overview of the features of Rommana ALM. As you can see, Rommana ALM is integrated with Jira and with Bugzilla. If you care to maintain your issue reports in Bugzilla or in Jira. It's also integrated with UFT, which used to be called QTP, for automated test execution. It is also integrated with SVN subversion for code version control to make sure that you can establish the traceability between requirements and test cases and the code that's been written. Again, this is just a brief overview. Rommana ALM uses a SQL Server as a database repository. So everything from every single component within Rommana ALM is stored within SQL Server. It's a real time. There is no linking between the components. If you update a requirement, you look at it from a testing management component. The requirement has been updated. You can write your test cases there. And because Rommana ALM was designed to be a pure web application, you can access it from any browser, and the software itself runs on any Windows server, including the server on your own PC. You do not need any additional software to install. Basically, once you subscribe to Rommana ALM, you can start using it within 10 minutes. No infrastructure is needed like many of the tools out there. You can access it immediately from any browser that runs on the Windows platform. Something very important about tools in general. If a tool does not have a methodology behind it, it becomes very difficult to use a tool and produce any value out of it. So from the very beginning, Rommana ALM has been architected to support methodologies. So there is a test design methodology, there is project management methodologies, there are issue management methodologies that are supported by Rommana. Rommana supports both agile and non-agile methodologies, and you can use it seamlessly. You can mix between requirements and user stories within the same project. If you have a requirement that you'd rather maintain them as requirements, you can keep them as such, because many of the projects out there do not use user stories for everything they do. They use requirements and they use user stories at the same time. And of course, if you decide to use an agile methodology, Rommana ALM will support every aspect of the agile methodology out there. If you are curious about the word Rommana, it's actually an Egyptian word to mean a pomegranate, which really is symbol the quality. I'm sure you probably know that pomegranate is known to be the best antioxidant fruit out there, but also the integration and the tight tie between the different pieces within the pomegranate is really our symbol for a strong integration. I can spend some time here. I don't want to waste your time just reading the slides here, because I'd rather show you some actual actions within the tool here. But here's how requirements and user stories are supported within Rommana. You can do different versions of the user stories and the different versions of the requirements. You can have change requests when a customer would like to make a change to the existing requirement, and the change request can be used either to create a new version of the requirement or create a totally new requirement. Requirements can be collaboratively reviewed online, and the collaborative or the collaboration component of Rommana takes care of that. Everyone can review, everyone can keep their notes there. What's important here is that the collaboration comments from different people are maintained within the Rommana repository, so that you can look at them anytime. You can also include them in all the reports that you can produce about requirements and all user stories. Not only that requirements can be reviewed, but everything else, every entity within Rommana can be approved, reviewed and approved. You can associate your functional components with requirements and user stories. You can do all traceability between requirements, scenarios, back to the code modules, test cases, and so on. We're going to talk about this when we speak about test management. You can import requirements from Word documents, from Excel spreadsheets, from other projects. It's a very seamless process. Rommana ALM allows you to define functional requirements, quality requirements, and any kind of requirements or user stories you might have, and all this is user defined. As you know, requirements do not stand by themselves. Every requirement has tasks associated with them, and those tasks are things like reviewing the requirement, writing the code for the requirement, designing the requirement, testing the requirement. All these tasks are there attached to the requirement, so that you can do all the project management activities there. Certainly, many requirements have certain risks associated with them that might hinder the delivery of such requirements. That's why risks are associated there. If there is any action items that must be performed in order for the team to be able to deliver such a requirement or user story, it is there. As I said, if your project is using use cases, you can write use cases in connection with the requirements, and you can maintain use case scenarios as part of those use cases. Of course, Rommana believes in the concept of scenario-based development and testing. That's why you can actually write your scenarios for the user stories or for the requirements. But also, if your project is agile and you're using user stories, you can do your acceptance criteria in addition to scenarios. Last week, I gave a webinar on scenarios versus acceptance criteria, and I described or explained when you use one or another, or you use both. As typical in any requirement management component, you have to be able to baseline a requirement or a user story, meaning that this requirement cannot change after this point of time. Of course, if your project is agile, we believe that user stories can change any time, which is fine. That means that you do not have to baseline your user stories, but then Rommana ALM allows you to maintain the history of changes to a user story if a user story has changed. Rommana ALM has some support for release management and iterations and sprints, so you can actually plan different requirements for different releases. You can have multiple projects running at the same time. Every project is delivering certain features, and the release manager can go and plan a release by pulling features that are being implemented in different projects. Of course, it's very critical to have a relationship between requirements, because almost all the time, every requirement has a relationship to other requirements, and relationships can be of any nature, whether it has to do with being implemented at the same time, being tested at the same time, or there is a specific order of testing them or whatever. As I said, you can maintain a history of all the changes to requirements and user stories. And of course, you can imagine, as any decent tool, Rommana ALM allows you to define your own custom attributes for user stories and requirements. Scenarios are very critical within ALM. You can write scenarios for user stories or requirements. Scenarios are used by developers and by testers to implement the feature. very critical. And again, I think I have been scheduled to do a webinar on scenario-based development and testing. As we're going to see, scenarios are also very critical in conducting scenario-based risk analysis for setting priorities for certain types of tests, certain scenarios to be tested, and so on. Because as you can imagine, if you use a methodology supported within Rommana, you're going to be able to come up with much more scenarios than what you can ever test, and that's why we do the risk analysis on those scenarios to decide which scenarios will be tested, which scenarios will not be tested, or if we are interested in testing all scenarios, then you can split scenarios to some of them will be tested using formal testing and automated testing. Other scenarios will be tested using ad hoc and informal testing, and so on. Here's roughly the methodology with scenarios, whether you're using user stories or requirements, or even doing prototypes using user interface, or you have use cases. It doesn't matter where your starting point is, and you can be having more than one of those. Then you start having some collaborative discussion and reviews, which will help us elaborate user stories and requirements and user interface much more. And based on that, you can start building your scenarios and validating those scenarios. If you are using use cases, you have the use case scenarios here. But what's most important in this methodology is that those scenarios are taken by the test team to write their own test cases and test scripts, and then the same scenarios are taken by the development team to do their unit testing. This is how Rommana ALM uses scenarios to do the risk-based testing. Assuming that you have those number of scenarios, for every scenario we define the impact of failure of each scenario, the frequency by which a scenario could be executed in production, and the probability of failure. And based on those three factors, we give them either high, medium, or low. And if you assume that high is 3, medium is 2, and low is 1, you can simply calculate an average there. And we use this average here as a testing priority. So that's, for example, here, 1 plus 2 plus 2, that's 5 divided by 3, it's 1.66. And so on. And then you can sort the scenario sheet by testing priority, so that you can see all the ones that have higher priority on the top. Those are the ones you can start testing, and the other ones at the bottom, which most likely are going to be 1.0 or 1.33, like that one. Then if you sort them like that, then you could simply decide to leave those scenarios out if you have more time to test, or you can decide to test those scenarios. You can test those scenarios using exploratory testing or other less formal types of tests. This column here, which says, is this scenario explicitly mentioned or in the requirement, it's very important when you decide the probability of failure, because if a scenario is explicitly stated in the requirement or the user story, then you know that developers know about the scenario. Most likely they wrote the code to implement it. So that really take a lesser testing priority, because we do not want to test the things we know are going to pass anyway. Change management is here. That's when user stories or requirements change, how the change requests are handled, how change requests are used to create new requirements or new versions of the existing requirement. Use case management. If you know about use cases, they are much more detailed than requirements and user stories. Use cases normally have their own scenarios that are called the paths, and they provide much more details about the behavior of the software, and that's all supported in Rommana ALM. The test management component uses a scenario-based development and testing methodology to help you design your tests. And as I always say, and that we've been told by so many companies that used the methodology with the scenario-based approach, you can basically prevent problems or issues or bugs from getting into the software. Because the thing about the methodology is that developers and testers use scenarios, they review scenarios before they even start writing the code. As you saw in the previous diagram I showed you here, that scenarios are built, developed, and validated before code is even started. By the time we get here to build our code, we know exactly what needs to be built. Some people claim that acceptance criteria can do the same, and of course that's never true. And you can listen to my recorded webinar on scenarios versus acceptance criteria and see that acceptance criteria are not the same. When you build the scenarios here, you are really flushing out all the details of a user story or a requirement far before developers start writing their code, right? So, so you create scenarios, you get them reviewed by developers and product owners and business analysts. And once they're reviewed, agreed upon, discussed, then developers can go ahead and write their code and write their design. You can certainly, for each scenario, as I said, you can decide to write test cases, formal test cases, and write scripts, or you can go ahead and write an exploratory test case, which is executed differently from the formal tests. Of course, you can establish traceability from requirements to scenarios to test cases, as long as you have an ALM tool. Right. There is something important in test management, in the test management component, and that's about writing test scripts for a group of test cases. So the way Rommana ALM does it is that it allows you to group your test cases into test sets, and when it comes time to write a script, you write the script for groups of test cases. So you don't have to write too many scripts. I've seen it when I worked with many projects, trying to help them minimize the script maintenance effort. There's so many thousands and thousands of test scripts that have been written. Rommana ALM methodology really prevents this from happening by requiring you to group test cases into test sets. All right. For issues and defect management or issue management, it gives you the history of the changes into the issue. It tells you who's assigned to the issue, who's working on it, has it been tested or not, and all the details are there. I will be able to show you some of this stuff as we go. Now, project management, as I said earlier, Rommana ALM uses a very unique approach to project management, which we call feature-based project management. Everything in the project management component is around user stories and requirements, whether it is effort estimation, how much time is going to take, how much effort, how many people, who's working on it, the schedule, the actual timeline of the project. Everything is in terms of features, which is either user story or a requirement. So, because if you think about it, the ultimate deliverable of any project is what? Is the feature. So all that your customers care about are the features that you are going to be delivering. So as a result, you need to phrase everything in terms of features. Even when you come to speak about timeline and what's going to be delivered when, or when a feature or a user story or requirement is being changed, then you need to see the impact of this on the timeline. Cost estimation, time estimation, they're all done in terms of user story or requirements. All right, tasks and risks are there. When it comes to sprint or iterations as well as release management, you can, as I said earlier, you can have multiple projects running at the same time. Some of those projects may be agile, some of them are not. it doesn't matter, because in a larger system, and I had the privilege to work with very large systems, embedded software, and there's no one project that implements the features. You may have at least 5 to 10 different projects running at the same time. Every project is implementing certain user stories or requirements. Some of those projects are agile, some of them are using an agile methodology. It doesn't matter. The release manager needs to pull out some features from some of those projects and put them into a release. So the relationship between a release and the projects is very much many to many, because a given project can deliver features to more than one release. And not necessarily all the requirements or the user stories implemented in one project are going into the same release. I mean, this is a common sense of release management. With the same token, not every release must take its features from one project. So it's very much a many-to-many relationship, and that's why a release manager can actually pull out whatever features he or she wants to include in the release from different projects. Of course, if we're putting out the result of sprints with the same token, we don't have to say the user stories within that project are going out on that date, because you can pull out user stories from different sprints from different Agile projects. That's the concept of sprint and iteration management. All right, now we come to collaboration management. As I said earlier, every project member can participate in requirement reviews, scenarios reviews, use cases, change request reviews, test cases, and also the approval authorities are there. Rommana ALM or the collaboration management component allow you to decide on who's supposed to approve what and in which order and so on. And you can imagine this is important for, again, certain kind of projects where everything needs to be approved before we work. Of course, if your project is a simple agile project, you don't have to use the approval authority at all. When someone goes and reviews a requirement or a test case or a use case or whatever it is, then an email is triggered that goes out to everyone who's supposed to be involved, and it tells them what kind of comment has been made and so on, because the review process is synchronous, which means that it does not happen at the same time. You review things and you write your comments whenever you have time. All right, that's the integration with QTP or UFT from HP. The way it is just you write your script, you store it within the Rommana ALM, then you push the script from Rommana ALM to be executed with UFT, and then the results of the execution comes back to Rommana ALM so that you can include them in the test reports you produce from Rommana ALM. When it comes to the integration with Jira and the Bugzilla, it's the same kind of integration where you can easily write your bug reports within Rommana, but you store them in Jira or vice versa. If you'd like to continue to use Jira or Bugzilla for your bug reports, Rommana ALM allows you to establish the traceability between user stories and requirements within Rommana ALM and the issues within Jira or Bugzilla. And you can transfer your bug reports from Jira within or Bugzilla if you wish to Rommana ALM anytime, and to keep all your project entities within Rommana ALM. The integration with the code version control is very simple. Simply, developers would use SVN to store their code modules. Then from within Rommana, you can easily see the relationship. You can see the traceability between requirements, user stories, scenarios, use cases, back to the code components. And that's important because code coverage is an important aspect of the methodology supported by Rommana ALM. And as you know, when we test, we want to make sure that we're not only achieving the highest level of requirement coverage, but also the highest level of code coverage. So this concept of traceability between requirements and user stories and the code help us see which parts of the code have not been tested and so on. It's very important because as you probably know, developers write code, a lot of code that we don't know about, and what most of the problems that happen in production is not because we did not do a very good job in testing requirements, but rather there was code out there that was written by developers that testers did not know about, and as a result, the testers had no way of testing it. So that's the problem we're trying to solve here by establishing the traceability between user stories, requirements, and code. All right. If your project is a medical device project or anything in the medical industry, you can see that Rommana ALM would help you do everything that's required by different by different standards, whether they are IEC standards or ISO standards or FDA standards. All the features, that's very slow here. So all the features, all the requirements of those standards are supported within Rommana ALM. I do not want to waste your time here because I have a separate presentation which is now already recorded, but I think I'm scheduled to do it in the next few weeks on how Rommana ALM has complete support for the medical industry. The last slide I'm going to show you here is a survey that I was talking about done by RQX Global, and here is Rommana ALM at the very beginning. The score was 7.1. There was only one tool that was close enough to that, called the Blueprint. I think that tool got acquired by another company now. I don't know what company was that. But here are all the other tools. Not sure if you can see all the names here, but here are Doors from IBM. Of course, Doors is only a requirement management tool, but they labeled themselves as an ALM tool. That's why it was reviewed by the same survey. I'm looking for Jira here. Jira was not included here, but certainly Quality Center from HP is here with the score of slightly above 2 and so on. But again, the survey is available, or the actual report, which is over 100 pages, that was produced by RQX Global, is available on our website if you're interested. And this is very independent research company. We have nothing to do with it. We were not even aware of the survey or the study when it was being done until it was completed. All right. With that being said, I have about 20 minutes left to share with you how Rommana ALM does that if you are interested. Before I do that, let me tell you that you can easily go into the Rommana website and get a free trial for 60 days for up to 3 members of your team. You can get a free trial of any one of the components, only the requirements, or the requirements and test management, or the requirement test management issue management, or you can get a free trial for the whole complete requirement ALM product, which supports all the components. All right, so that's a good opportunity to play with it. And as I said, it's 3 team members, so you can put one of them as a project manager, the other one are team members, and you can run an actual project. And of course, like any other free trial, if you do a project with the free trial, and then later on you decide to acquire Rommana ALM, then we can transfer the data from your free trial to the project. I forgot to tell you that Rommana ALM is available as both hosted in your premises or on the cloud. So you can simply do the cloud subscription, or you can install it on the premises for limited license, 1 year at a time, or you can just purchase unlimited license. Most of people find out that subscription is the easy way to do, and here are the prices per user for the cloud subscription. So if you're interested only, for example, for the requirement piece, then it's $25 per user per month. If you go down all the way to the complete Rommana ALM, $150 per month per user for the complete Rommana ALM. But again, you can easily acquire a license of Rommana where you can install it on your own server, so you are not using our cloud at all. It's not a subscription, but rather an installation. All right, I'll leave this page here. I will go now and start a site. So when you actually install Rommana or subscribe to Rommana, you get a site like this, which is yourcompany.rommana.com. It's a subdomain of the Rommana.com. I'm going to log in here to this site. I'll log in as, so of course, because this username has a privilege of site manager as well as product owner, and the project manager gives you the option. I'm going to log in as a product owner, project manager. When I do that, you can see on the left all the systems or the products that are within this site. We just included different things here to tell you that a given Rommana site can support any kind of projects. We have Rommana ALM here. We have diabetes management system here. We have airline reservation system, which is very different. We have also Rommana ALM, because you can imagine we use the Rommana ALM software to manage the projects of Rommana ALM. All right, so on the product level here, you can look at the product backlog, and that's true whether your project is agile or not. Remember, this is on the product level, so we don't even know what kind of projects we're going to be running for this product, which is very, very flexible. I know we started to learn about the concept of product backlog only within the agile methodologies, but I've always maintained a product backlog when I worked on projects that are not agile, because product backlog is always there, and those are the features. I'm not going to say user stories, because again, when it comes to a product, it's just a feature. Those are the features that we hope to implement and release one day. Now, are we going to actually do this or not? We don't know. And those like if I were to click here, it's going to give me everything on the backlog. So many pages, as you can see. All right. So the product backlog is there, whether your project is agile or not, and the release manager with the project managers can decide on which one of those backlog items can go into which product or which project or which sprint. Anyway, so now on the right here, I can see all the projects of the specific product I have selected. So don't mind the way the projects were named, because this is simply saying we're going to be working on features for this release. Although I already told you the relationship between project and releases is many to many, but in the older days, the relationship was 1-to-1, which means one project would implement the features for a specific release. That's why the names of the projects are like that, but not anymore. Not anymore. Like here, for example, this project is putting together, having features for program management capabilities, okay? Or this project here has features for the medical industry. Now, we may actually take some of the features from this project into a given release, or we may actually decide to take all of them into the specific release. I may have another project that implements also some other features for the medical device support, and then we can pick up some features from here and there. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open a project. It doesn't matter which one I open. I'm going to open this one because this one supports the Agile methodology as well as the non-Agile methodology. So when you open any project, you can see the dashboard, which any decent tool must give you. And the dashboard is simply in some stats you'd like to see about your project. And of course, as you can imagine, that dashboard is completely configurable. You can configure what kind of stats you'd like to see by including or excluding certain statistics. You can scroll here to see different other statistics and so on. Now, what's important here about the dashboard, as I said, like any other decent tool, everything in the dashboard is clickable. For example, here's issue by status. I have 15 issues now that are still opened. If I want to know what those are, I can simply click here. It gives me the 15 issues that are still open. Anyone can see them. I can click on any one of them. It says, okay, why is this still open? Let's look at it. Let's find it out. And here's the history. Here's everything about the issue report. It was open on that date, was worked on, and someone added something here. So here's the issue. And if this has been worked on by multiple people, you can see the history there. It tells you the source, the estimated number of hours, the actual number of hours, the required fixed date, and so on. And these are all the details about the issue. So that's so all what I did now, I clicked on one of the issues within those 15 issues. I'm going to close this now, go back to my dashboard. So you can click on any items. I'm going to go beyond that. Now, anything you want to do in Rommana ALM, they're up here. Here are the user stories. If this project was not agile, then this would have been requirements as opposed to user stories. The change requests are here. These are all the change requests that have been written, approved or not, to make changes to existing user stories or requirements. Here are all the test sets that have been written. Documents and models are here. When I say models here, we're talking about certain things like decision tables, activity diagrams, and so on that were written and created in addition to requirements to support the requirements, to support anything. Here are all the reports within Rommana ALM. Issue management is here. If I click here, it gives me a list of all issues within Rommana ALM. But of course, you can look at issues by requirements. You can look at issues by test case and so on. There's more stuff here. All the ad hoc or exploratory tests are here. The use cases are here. If you're interested in a specific project entity, they're here. If you want to see the scenarios, requirements, this is just like shortcuts here. Okay, the collaboration center is here that allows you to do a number of things. I'm going to go and open user stories. As you can see here, user stories are classified to functional user stories, quality user stories, usability user stories, hardware, software, whatever you want, implementation constraints. If this project was a medical device project, has FDA regulations. And as I said earlier, you don't have to write everything in terms of user stories. I have some user stories here, all right? But I have something here that does not look like user story. All right, it's defining functional components. Or another thing here that says make links available in exported requirement test coverage report. The reason Rommana ALM allows you to do this is because Rommana ALM does not want to force you to write everything in the form of a user story. As I was saying in my webinar last week, there's nothing magic to the format of a user story. As a user, I want to be able to do this. Nothing magic. I don't know why people are making a big deal out of that format. You can keep things as requirements as you always use them, okay? And you can deal with them as such. So a tool should never force you to use certain syntactic elements and certain semantic associated with those. So you could simply use this. So if I have a requirement here on quality, I'm down here. If I have something about, for example, security or or anything, or portability, or interoperability, I can write this in the form of requirement. Again, this is coming from my 35 or 40 years experience with requirement management. There are so many types of requirements, and not all those requirements can be phrased as user stories. Again, if you want more details on this, you can listen to my webinar of last week regarding the acceptance criteria versus scenarios, and I touched on user stories there. I can go now and click on any user story. As you can see, user stories are in a hierarchy of details. This is an epic that has been divided into 2 user stories here. If I click on one of them, it's going to give me the details of the user story. All right. User story has description, has acceptance criteria. We have not yet written any acceptance criteria for this user story, but I could add one. So I can write anything here, acceptance criteria 1, and just add it. As simple as that. It's added there. Here are everything that's connected with the requirements. And really, you can see everything supported by Rommana ALM in here. So for example, here is the history of the changes. If I click on it, it tells me every change that happened to this user story, when, who, why, and things like that. All right, that's the history. I can see here custom attributes. I can see scenarios. There's only one scenario here. I just opened one user story that had one scenario. It doesn't mean that that's what it is. But again, it's right here. You can see the scenario that was written. But typically for a user story or requirement, you may have over 50 or 60 scenarios. All right, so I'm going to close this user story. I made some updates. I don't care to maintain it. So let me open a different user story here. This user story, for example, here has 24 ad hoc or exploratory tests here. Some of them are passed, some of them are failed, some of them are deferred because we cannot execute them yet. And by the way, you have full control over those colors because you can customize the color of anything, and you customize also the status, because you may not have a status called deferred in your project, which is fine. Typically people have passed or failed, but in this project, the project manager filtered that, or the test manager filtered that. Some test cases would be deferred for whatever reason, and if I were to open this ad hoc test here, it tells me what the test is. An ad hoc test, by the way, is very simple. If you put the cursor here on ad hoc tests, it tells you what they are. There are tests that have been written not following the Rommana tested design methodology, but rather just an exploratory test case. If you're doing exploratory tests, they tell you have to write down what you're trying to test, and that's simply what it is. That's what I'm trying to test. If I feel like what I wrote is not clear enough, I can provide description. I can write my expected results, and I encourage people to always write their expected results of an exploratory test. Although most of the people advocating exploratory testing, they say, no, you need to explore and find out what the software does. But again, if you want to test, you want to be able to determine at the end whether the test you are running is pass or fail, and because of that, you need to know what you expect. And here's the actual result. That's a simple ad hoc / exploratory test. Okay, very simple. By the way, pay attention to the breadcrumbs here, because at the top here, it tells me that this ad hoc test was written for this scenario. Okay, so if I click here, it should take me back to the scenario. Now I am looking at scenario number 15, and here is the scenario name, scenario description, expected behavior of the scenario. Here are the risk factors, the frequency of occurrence, the impact of failure, and so on, as we explained. And look at the testing priority of this scenario to be 3 based on those factors, because all of them are high. Now, as you can see at the bottom of the scenario screen here, you can have either ad hoc tests, or you can have test cases written formally. I have not written any test case here, but there is one ad hoc test case, that's the one we were looking at. You can actually create a new ad hoc test right here, or you can create a new test case right here. Okay, and now the structure of the test case is different from the structure of the ad hoc test. A test case within Rommana ALM has preconditions, it has post conditions, it has input. So the preconditions would be stated here. Basically, preconditions are all the conditions that must be true before I can even start executing the test case. And the post conditions are everything that I expect to find to be true if the test case actually passed. And so someone says, is this like my expected results? Well, yes, but post conditions plus your output are really your expected results. So I'm going to encourage you to go ahead and request a free trial of Rommana ALM from the website there, and just see if it fits within the kind of things you do in your projects. Thank you so much for joining me in this webinar. This webinar is being recorded and will be available at the Rommana website sometime early next week. So I'm going to go here to show you where the rest of the recorded webinars are. Education webinars are here. Here are the previously recorded webinars if you are interested. Thank you again. When you get the link to the recording, please feel free to share it with other team members. All right. Hope to see you in other webinars. Thank you.